Hey everybody, it's Lindsay. For this week, we're going to be talking about the historical sort of aspects of mental and emotional health. Unlike physical health and some of our other sort of aspects, our ideas and our beliefs and our research around mental and emotional health is much farther behind. Based on the readings this week, you likely saw that for most of human history, we have looked at mental and emotional health as some sort of scary thing. It's invisible, maybe it's phantasmas, or maybe it's spiritual sort of corruption or other sort of things. And it wasn't until the more modern era that we even began to see mental and emotional health as some sort of condition that is not brought on by mysteries or bad spirits or all these other sort of things, right? But for most of human history, people knew that mental and emotional health was a thing. They just didn't know how to describe it, right? Which is something that we talked about last week in class, talking about why is mental and emotional health so hard to work with, and why is it so hard to deal with in public health? Well, because it's invisible, right? And so people believe that it's made up, it's all in your head. These are not real sort of things. Well, this comes from a really historical sort of place. And so it's pretty natural that people have thought that over time. And for thousands of years, that's pretty much what we believed. At some point, we started to say, well, we know that physical health is a thing, right? We know that when people break bones or that they have blood disorders or other sort of things, we can find a physical trace of it. This is where we graduated into the era of, drilling holes into people's skulls to say, hey, I think there is something physical there, which is sometimes true, right? We do know that there are brain scans and other sort of things that we can look at as regards to mental and emotional health that does point to some physical nature, but still, largely, most mental and emotional health conditions and stress and all those sort of things are on an invisible level. And so we did start to see that development of physical sort of nature of things. But from there, we decided, hey, you know what, there's just nothing that we can do about this. And so we oftentimes leave mental and emotional health programs still today to be very much an individual family sort of problem. That's your problem. Maybe you caused that. Maybe this is something that is bad about your family. And so oftentimes we have said, you know what, we're not going to deal with this in a systemic way, in a public health way. We say, yeah, let's look at this in an individual sort of thing. And that's where it lies, within the family and other sort of things. What we've seen from this is the evolution of ideas about people who are mentally ill, right? A lot of stigma and shame has come up in terms of, oh, these people are crazy, they're bad spirits, they're possessed, they have all these sort of things, to, oh, it's your family's fault, you are a bad person, you come from a bad family. And so we've seen this idea of evolution of stigma over the years. It used to be that, people in some cultures and in some ways, they would just be left alone and say, like, you know what, that's the kind of person that they are, and we would leave them alone. At some point, people decided, you know what, these people are harmful, and so we're going to need to put them in mental hospitals, right? And so this is where we saw the rise of mental hospitals, the rise of the great asylums, and other things in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This unfortunately led to a lot of terrible things, which you're going to find out about today in the videos that you watch. But what we have to remember is that at all times, we have used different methods of things to have tools of social control. We've tried to say, hey, there's something wrong with you that's inherently bad and different, and so we need to do something to you to protect the rest of us who are not mentally ill. And that is going to be a theme that carries on throughout the rest of the semester. Okay, so for the first thing that I want you to do is to watch the BBC documentary, A History of the Madhouse. It is a BBC documentary. It is based out of the United Kingdom. However, it is very similar to the things that happened here in the United States. Both Britain and the United States were at the forefront of mental and emotional health treatment in this period of time. And so our insane asylums and the British insane asylums looked very similar. So this video is from YouTube, and it talks a lot about sort of what was done, what was believed, what were sort of the changes that led to the closing of the asylums, which brings us up to the modern era. It is a hard video to watch. It's not necessarily graphic, but there is a lot of hard stuff in it because we didn't treat people with mental health issues very nicely, and we did do a lot of weird, gross stuff to them. And so it is definitely something to practice self-care with, but it is a good documentary that will give you sort of some perspective. So after that's over, think about it, reflect on it. How would you describe sort of the treatment of the mentally ill up until this modern era, right? Most people would say it's pretty bad, it's terrible, we abused people, and it sucked, and it was a good thing that the asylums were closed, right? Which makes me think this is why we study history, right? We have to look at our mistakes and look at the past to say, where are we going to go from here? And so that's one of the reasons I have you look at this sort of historical piece. It helps you to understand where we've come from, what we've learned, and where we need to go from here. Secondly, this week, I'm going to have you look at contemporary sort of mental health treatment here in the United States. We went from asylums, which were pretty much bad news all around, to state mental hospitals, which were slightly better. But in the readings, you'll see that Ronald Reagan and some other people closed those down in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and went for a period of sort of integration where people who are mentally ill would be integrated with society. That has also been pretty much of a failure. And so now currently the majority of our people who are mentally and emotionally ill are housed in jails, right? And so you're going to watch a video from the Cook County Jail in Chicago, which is one of the largest jails in the entire country. Chicago and LA kind of rival each other in terms of how many people are mentally ill that are housed in jail situations. And so I want you to think about, is there much of a difference, right? On the one hand, asylums were really abusive, and we would hope jails were less so. But are there some pretty striking similarities between jails and asylums, right? Loss of freedom, people see you as less than, a lot of other sort of things. And so it's a really important sort of parallel to be able to bring. And so you're going to watch this Vice documentary. It's shorter. It's a 20-minute-ish documentary about mental health behind bars. I want to remind you that the system that they have set up at Cook County Jail in Chicago is the best in the country, okay? This is not typical. It is not standard. That's not what the Butte County Jail looks like. It's not what most jails in the country look like. This is the sort of shining jewel of our jail system, which is not really saying a lot. And so just kind of keep that in mind as you're watching that. Think about that, and then again, go back and reflect. Are jails better than asylums? They're different. Maybe other ways that they might be slightly better, but is it really the place where we should be putting the mentally ill is in jails rather than doing something to be able to help them, right? But then again, what are the answers? And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the semester. What do we do? How do we keep the mentally ill safe? How do we keep society safe? How do we treat them in an integrated sort of approach? Those are big picture questions that we don't really have a lot of good answers for, but we'll continue to talk about those throughout the semester, okay? Finally, your moment of Zen for this week is guided meditation. When people think about meditation, they often think of, the skinny yogi sitting under the Bodhi tree. And yes, that is meditation, but for most of us, we don't meditate that way. For most of us, meditation looks a lot different. And so this week, I'm going to introduce you to guided meditation. Guided meditation is where you have an external source, in this case, I'm using a YouTube video that talks you through a meditation, tells you, breathe and relax and do these sort of things. There are tons of them on YouTube. You can find really short ones, 5 minutes. 5-minute meditations are my favorite. If you go to YouTube and you just Google 5-minute meditation, you'll get thousands of them. There's longer ones. Some don't have as many words. Some are more sound-based and other sort of things, but it's a really great way to get into a meditation practice in a way that is accessible and easy to understand. And so for a lot of people, guided meditations are a great way to do. For your mental and emotional health tools this semester that you're going to have to do, this is one that you could use. Being able to participate in guided meditations on a regular sort of basis. So doing, 5 minutes every morning or 5 minutes before bed, depending on how meditation makes you feel. For some people, it makes you feel alert. For some people, it makes you feel tired. Get into a practice. Do that for a week and then write about that for your mental and emotional health tool. It can be a really important sort of practice, okay? Finally, this week, you have a discussion board to do based on the videos for this week. It is due Friday by 11:59 p.m. And then after that, we'll move into week 3 stuff. All right, thanks.